Welcome to my cruise pod. I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. In this video, we're gonna be sharing everything that you need to know about Port Everglades in Fort Lauderdale, a major departure port for cruisers. First, let's talk about Port Everglades. Some people call this the Fort Lauderdale cruise port, or they just say I'm cruising out of Fort Lauderdale, but it is officially called Port Everglades. This is a smaller port compared to Port Miami, but it's still pretty busy. It accommodates nearly 3 million cruise passengers each year. Now, interestingly enough, Port Everglades isn't just located in Fort Lauderdale, but it also extends and is partially included in nearby Hollywood in Dania Beach. What's really interesting about this port too is it's pretty close, only 29 miles, to one of the biggest cruise ports in the world, which is Port Miami. Port Everglades has 8 terminals and they are numbered. Numbers 2, 4, 18, 19, 21, 25, 26, and 29. Your specific terminal will be listed in your cruise documents, but if you don't see it, don't fret. Because when you get to the cruise port, there is lots of signage, just like you'll find at an airport, that guides you to the correct location. Just make sure you know your cruise line and your ship name, and you'll get there. If you want the specific address, it is 1850 Eller Drive. But if you just input Port Everglades into your rideshare app, if that's what you're using, you'll get there just fine, and all the taxi drivers know where it is. Now let's talk about getting to Port Everglades. If you're flying in, the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, which is airport code FLL, is just 3 miles from the port, so it's super close. Now traffic can get a little bad here, so that can sometimes take 8 to 15 minutes, but it's still generally a pretty smooth, easy, and short drive. Now, if you are taking a cruise out of Port Everglades, I always encourage cruisers to check pricing also in and out of Miami International Airport because they're only located about 26 miles apart. And sometimes you can find a much cheaper flight into or out of Miami, and it's more affordable to fly that way and then just take an Uber over to Port Everglades. I just booked a cruise out of Port Miami and booked my flight. And it was actually cheaper for me to fly into Miami and fly back home out of FLL, or Fort Lauderdale Airport. And that's often the case. So make sure you're not just checking airfare prices out of Miami, but you're checking one-ways as well, to and from both Miami and Fort Lauderdale, if you're like me and you like to ball on a budget and save some money whenever you cruise. Now let's talk about some common transport options. The easy option to get from the airport to the cruise port that a lot of newbies do is cruise line transfer. Most cruise lines offer transfer service from FLL Airport to Port Everglades. Now in this case, I don't recommend cruise line transfer to anybody because I priced it out with Carnival as an example, and it's about $25 per person to go 3 miles. So if you're traveling, especially with 2 or more people, it's gonna be substantially cheaper to use a different transportation option, namely an Uber. Another option is a hotel shuttle. If you fly into Fort Lauderdale or Miami the night before, and you're looking for a hotel in the area to stay, which we'll cover in a moment, some of them offer a shuttle to guests, but they're not free. They usually come at a cost around $9 to $20 per person. And by the way, always fly in at least the night before to your cruise. Don't try to fly in same day. It's asking for disaster. Another option is rideshare. This is almost always my top recommendation, and it's definitely my top recommendation in most cases for Port Everglades. I price it out, and I also take this route often because I cruise out of Port Everglades several times a year. And an Uber is gonna cost you about $15 to $25 for up to 4 passengers, which is a bargain compared to the cruise line transfer option. And it's a lot more pleasant and convenient. And I do want to share a final option because a lot of cruisers never think to consider this. And this is a private transfer service. This is a steal if you're traveling in a larger group. There's a company I recommend called Get Transfer. I'll drop the link below. They offer private transfer services from most major cruise ports, but they do service both FLL and Miami Airport. So regardless of which airport you're flying into, this can be a very convenient and cost-effective method to get to the cruise port if you have a group. And when I say group, I'm talking even bigger families of 4, 5, 6, and that kind of thing. So always look at that. I have the link below. Just check the pricing because it might surprise you. And it's great to have that private option and you're not stuck on a bus with a bunch of random cruisers. Now let's talk about those of you that drive in and need parking at Port Everglades. There's lots of parking at Port Everglades, but if you are a budget-conscious cruiser, there is also off-site parking that presents a great option. There are also a lot of local hotels that offer what are called park and stay packages, and that includes your overnight stay, plus shuttle to the port, plus included parking at that hotel property for a set number of days. If you want to go with off-site parking, there is a company called Airport Parking Reservations that offers cheaper off-site parking, because it's off-site, of course, that runs about $7 to $15 per day, and they will shuttle you from the parking lot to the cruise port back and forth. So lots of great parking options. There's no shortage here. Next, let's talk hotels. I will be honest with you, cruisers get really hung up on finding the perfect hotel in the departure port city that's perfectly designed for cruisers. To be honest, most hotels, they're more or less the same. So if you have access to some smoking hotel deal or special discount, or if you're like me and you travel with credit card points and get hotels for free, just use those. But if you don't have these things and you don't want to search through a billion different hotel options, I'm going to give you my top recommendations. And it can get overwhelming here because there are a lot of hotel options, and then there's beachfront, not beachfront, and then there's surrounding areas. And so it can get confusing and hard to narrow it down. So I'm going to give you my top recommendations. These are based on both my personal experiences for hotels I have personally stayed at, and for those that I have not stayed with, I scoured all of the cruise forums, I talked to other cruisers, consolidated feedback, and I only include those that are consistently top rated. I also call all of these hotels to make sure the information I'm providing you is accurate, because there's a lot of incorrect info on the internet. First, let's talk about hotels near Port Everglades. So these are just your basic hotels. They're not anything fancy. They're not beachfront. They're a comfortable, safe, usually bed-bug-free location to lay your head the night before a cruise. My first recommendation is Comfort Suites Fort Lauderdale Airport and Cruise Port. The address is 302 North Federal Highway, and this is actually located in Dania Beach, which, remember, is also where Port Everglades is located. There are a lot of perks to this property. You get free shuttle from the airport. So you fly in, they'll shuttle you to the property at no cost. You get free Wi-Fi and hot breakfast is included. They do offer a shuttle to the cruise port, but it costs $15 per person. And again, this is a very short distance. So in this case, using Uber is most likely going to be much cheaper, especially if you have 2 or more cruisers. And it's so much more pleasant and convenient. My second recommendation is Hyatt Place Fort Lauderdale Cruise Port. This is located at 1851 Southeast 10th Avenue in Fort Lauderdale. Benefits of this are that it's close to the Fort Lauderdale airport, which again, the airport, the cruise port, they're all really close together. So that doesn't really matter, but it's close to the airport. You also get complimentary continental breakfast and free Wi-Fi. They also offer a free shuttle to Port Everglades, the cruise port, and it's a little cheaper than the last property, costing $9 per person. So if you're a solo cruiser, that's a great option, but if you have 2 or more cruisers, Uber is probably going to be more cost effective. Next is Courtyard Fort Lauderdale Airport and Cruise Port, located at 400 Gulf Stream Way in Dania Beach. This is great because it's close to the Tri-Rail station. So if you like to venture out and explore a city, you're comfortable with public transportation, this is a great choice. You also get free Wi-Fi and shuttle service from the airport to the hotel. If you want to take the shuttle to the cruise port, they do offer that, but at a cost of $20 per person, which in my opinion is obscene and highway robbery. And an Uber for even one person is going to be cheaper and more convenient. So for the love of Pete, if you stay here, do not give them $20 a person to take you to the cruise port. It's highway robbery. But otherwise, a good hotel. Now let's talk about Fort Lauderdale beach hotels. If you're flying in the day before your cruise, which again, always advisable at least one day before, if not 2 in some cases, and you want to enjoy a beach day experience on the front end of your cruise, or even on the back end of your cruise when you come back, here are some great hotel options. Now, I want to let you know that this area, just like Miami, gets really, really crazy in the months of March and April. because this is spring break season in this part of Florida. So you're gonna get all kinds of rowdy spring breakers acting crazy and being drunk, and hotel prices are gonna skyrocket. So if you're cruising in March and April, just stay with an affordable hotel that's not in the beach area. Another thing to note about these beachfront hotels is that in this area, resort fees are common. So you always want to consider and ask and find out if there is a resort fee before you book, because that can create some unpleasant sticker shock. My first recommendation is the W Fort Lauderdale, located at 401 North Fort Lauderdale Beach Boulevard. This is great because this is luxury. You have access to loungers, umbrellas, bikes, yoga. It's close to the cruise port, about 13 to 15 minutes, but there is a $45 a night resort fee tacked on. So this one's pricey, but you get the luxury experience. My next recommendation is Lago Mar Beach Club and Resort, located at 1700 South Ocean Lane. This also is a luxury experience. In this case, the ultimate luxury with a private beachfront experience. They provide top-notch service. There are no additional resort fees, which is great, and it's located really close to Port Everglades, about 5 miles. My next recommendation is Hotel Marin Fort Lauderdale Beach, located at 525 South Fort Lauderdale Beach. This is a really cutesy boutique hotel. And although it's called Hotel Marin, it's part of Hilton's Curio collection. So those are those separately branded chic boutique hotels. If you stay here, you'll enjoy access to beach chairs, yoga, and a ton of great amenities. You're close to the port, but a little further than the other properties, but only about 6 miles. And there is a daily resort fee, so make sure you consider that before booking. Now, as I mentioned, I spent a lot of time researching these properties to make sure you have the most accurate, up-to-date information, including calling these hotels personally. But things change. If you spot any updates, please let me know so I can keep this video guide current. So just drop down in the comments if anything has changed, or if you have any other great hotel recommendations in this area that you think people should know about. And I also include convenient links for all of these properties down in the comments. And I personally thank you for when you book to use those links, because that does give me a small commission back in return for providing free content and research. And I promise you, it costs you nothing extra. There's no extra cost, it's the same exact rate, but I get a small commission for you using my link. So I appreciate you using my affiliate links. Thank you for tuning in. If you found this information helpful, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and visit my website, ProfessorMelissa.com, for tons of free cruise port guides, tips, advice, and everything in between. Happy cruising!